Hello everybody, my name's Ryan, I'm a driving instructor, and today, why don't they just stop the test when somebody fails? So why didn't they stop the question that was asked, put to me by one of my viewers. Right, before we go any further, like, comment and subscribe. So back in the olden days in COVID, what used to happen was that when you used to fail, you got taken back to the driving test after you got your first fail, which made a lot of sense because it limited exposure. But I often wonder if COVID, right, that it didn't matter how long you were exposed to the virus, whether it was a microsecond or an hour, I still think that it made very little difference. So I think that they shouldn't have continued the test. But I also think, in a funny kind of roundabout way, that they should have probably continued. Now what it is they won't terminate a test until you've got 4 serious or dangerous errors. And also, sometimes it can be 5 or 6. They'll only actually terminate the test when they feel that they're unsafe, whether the examiner's sat in the car and he feels his kids are not going to be safe in the back of your car, then that's the only time he will probably terminate the driving test. That's pretty straightforward. But why do they continue? Well, because they want you to have the experience of driving the test, really, to experience all of those elements, all those stop-starts, one of the 4 manoeuvres, an emergency stop, a series of junctions and roundabouts, a dual carriageway. That's the reason. That's the reason that they want you to experience it. They want you to have the full experience of a driving test. They don't want you to get out of the test centre and then just stop round the corner kind of a thing. Also, though, if they feel it isn't safe, so if you're driving your own car on a driving test and you're massively not ready, then they will identify it quite early on and they may force you to walk back to the test centre. But why can't they drive your car? Well, firstly, they're definitely not insured to drive your car. Now, my insurance policy on my car allows, with my consent, any driver over the age of 25 to drive my car. Comprehensive, because that's the policy. It also allows anybody with a license over the age of 14, provisional license, to learn to drive in my car. So why can't the examiner drive my car back? Well, technically he could, but he doesn't know what type of insurance policy I've got. He doesn't know. It might be just restricted to me being sat in my seat instructing. There might be terms and conditions that say that you can use the car on a driving test. Now, there has been some occasions where people are not insured to use a car on a driving test because they're not insured correctly. So when you click the little disclaimer on the iPad right at the start of the driving test, you've been here for 186 days, and do you have insurance on the car, then that's the proper insurance that you should be having for that driving test. There has been one occasion, and there's a video on it, where I've been sat in the back, the pupil's failed, the pupil has lost the marbles, they've given up, and at that point the examiner said, right, I can't tell you that you failed, but if you feel that you can't go on, then your instructor can sit in the front and drive us back to the test centre. And that's literally what I did. We swapped seats, and the examiner was very kind to say at that point, well, yes, I do have to tell you that you failed your driving test. And then he gave the actual debrief at the back at the test centre, ironically, and I drove all the way back. One driving examiner I was speaking to who called out a name, the candidate wasn't there, the candidate, for whatever reason, hadn't turned up, had told me that they'd been out on a driving test with a candidate who got just around the corner and they forced them to stop, and they said, okay, yeah, we can't go any further because you literally don't know how to drive. And they walked back to the test centre. They met the husband at the test centre and said, yeah, this lady, she can't drive. And he goes, oh, how far did you get? Well, I got as far as Halfords. Oh, that's much further than the last 3 times she went. Oh, yeah, I vaguely remember having this lady. But don't go to a driving test if you haven't had any lessons. What are you on? You're stupid. You're just going to occupy somebody's space where somebody could have had that driving test. Don't go to a driving test where you think you're going to not be successful. Even though it's 24-week waiting time, right? And there's no available driving test. It's easier to cancel that driving test and say, right, I'll cancel it, I'll get my money back, and I'll go and rebook it. Even if it's like 6 months later, it doesn't matter. Go and rebook it. All you're doing is you're occupying space where somebody could have had your slot, where somebody could have passed. There's 1 million people waiting for driving tests. 1 million. Well, there's 800,000 available slots on the booking service. Allegedly, according to DVSA and according to Intelligent Instructor, and all of those websites are telling me there's 800,000 driving test places that are currently full. So, yeah, don't do it. Make sure you're ready before you go. I had a test fail today. You'll have seen that video during the week. Going too fast, too slow, stuff like that. Cameras available, all on there. My dash cam fell off because it got so hot that the glue melted. The glue melted because it was so hot. So I'm going to have to find some new glue, like the proper stuff. Now this is on with like mirror mount stuff, and maybe I need some different types of. Anyway, I've digressed a little bit towards the end, but that's the reason that they like you to continue, is they like you after the experience. Also, if they stop, they're not going to stop 10 miles away. They're going to stop quite close. They won't stop like 3 miles because they've got to walk back. They'll just make somebody go, like, for example, if they're not sure about it, they'll just make you go around in a little loop and stop outside the test centre, because they're not insured to drive the car, irrelevant of what it says on the insurance certificate. That examiner might have a car elsewhere and he can drive another car third party. They don't like to do it. They're under strict instructions that they can't drive your car. They're not allowed to. So if you like what you saw, like, comment, subscribe. Subscribing is free, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now. We swapped seats, and the examiner was very kind to say at that point, well, yes, I do have to tell you that you failed your driving test. And then he gave the actual debrief at the back of the test centre, ironically, and I drove all the way back. And I had to drive like an absolute saint, which I do all the time, of course. 90% of the time, of course. So, yeah, no, actually, I do drive really well. And the point is that they want you to have the experience.